Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the GEEKWOLD GQ100. This is GEEKWOLD's latest IEM. It's you could call it a tribrid of sorts. It's got 2 BAs, 3 DDs, and 4 PZTs, so 4 piezoelectric drivers. And they are set up in a way where you have two of the DDs are connected or in the same shell, or same enclosure, same let's say same body. One handling the sub bass and one handling the bass, and it has a PZT unit, 2 PZT units on top of that. Let's say that group of drivers, and then you have the other DD driver with the other pair of PZTs, creating a second, let's say a second block. Okay, all the drivers are 8mm, and the reason why they have decided to do this, well, first of all, because they like to do things different. That's the reality. They have always been known since the beginning of their, since the time of the GQ10 and then the GQ80 and so on. They've always tried to do or have a novel approach, and they've always actually been known for using piezoelectrics in their implementations. And truth be told, it's not that piezoelectric drivers are complicated or elaborate. No, they are very simple. Their functioning is very basic, but that brings with it as well some basic results. And so to try and extract the best out of them without their negative aspects is not always easy. But GEEKWOLD, much like BQ, EYZ, I think have gotten that formula perfected over time, and the GQ100 is the perfect proof of that. Anyway, this is the box. Very simple, very basic, simple effect affair. Nothing too complicated. They mention in the back here a little bit of what I just mentioned. So you have two, like mention the 2 piezoelectrics with one of the 8mm, and then the other 2 piezoelectrics with the double 8mm, and then the BAs by themselves. It just goes through what I just basically told you. A thing to notice is that they've got a 17 ohm impedance, so they really shouldn't cause any problems. If you apply the rule of 8, they're just over. It shouldn't be an issue for any amplifier. Anyway, this is the sleeve. The box opens up in this manner, like a book. Okay, and inside we get that case over there. All right, and we have this cable, which is basically the same cable as that one I've got there. They're both HAKUGEI. I just liked more that color, that's why I'm using that one, but it's the same cable. Okay, both of them are modular, as you can see, so that's been a nice addition, or a nice detail that GEEKWOLD has had here. And then it brings some tips, and although we are always welcomed and always appreciate the tips and so on and so forth, here lies, in my modest opinion, one of the aspects that perhaps a little bit more work could have been done, because the tips, like in any other IEM, but much more, I would guess, or I would say in the GQ100, the tips make or break this IEM. And these particular tips, the stock tips, honestly, they don't allow the GQ100, in my opinion, to shine as it can or as it should. And to a certain extent, they actually maybe potentiate what is already a very vivid, a very open sound. But anyway, I'll get into that a little bit more detail now, following up. Let me just for the sake of, oldies or goldies, and just to remind you guys of what they did in the past. Okay, this was the original GQ10. If you guys recall, this was back like maybe 2020. Followed kind of the same philosophy as well of implementation of dual dynamics, dual. It had 2 dynamic drivers, an 8 and a 7 if I'm not mistaken, and then BAs and piezoelectric. So this was the original. Cost like $50 something, and you know what, it actually didn't play bad. It actually wasn't bad. And when I show you the graphs a little bit later, you'll see that the very basic premise or structure of the graph of this one is what is there on the GQ100. So the formula here, they got the formula, the original formula right. Then that was followed up by the GQ80, which was this one here. Okay, this was significantly more expensive, but this was a disappointment in my opinion. This was a very big step backwards. They went only for 1DD. It just, you know, it became a monstrous V shape. This was not a good IEM in my opinion. Not good. But anyway, it was just a curiosity. Onto the GQ100, which is what matters and what we want to know. It's got a nice resin shell. Okay, cool faceplate design, nice lettering on the faceplate. Both of them say the GEEKWOLD name brand. It would have been nice if instead of maybe being like it is in this position, because the IEMs is like this, for it to actually be in the proper position saying GEEKWOLD. But this is just minor things. I'm just nitpicking. But anyway, the shell is nice. It's light. It's printed or CNC printed. Or there's some sort of printing going on here because the whole structure inside has been very well done. I've actually seen some renderings of that, and it's really well done. It's very, very well done actually. Fits beautifully in my ears. I have no issues, and you can really see that I'm sporting some different tips here, and I'll get to that now. So it fits nicely, isolates nicely, no issues, not fatiguing to wear because of the weight, being low and so on. And yeah, that's basically it. I mean, in terms of hardware, what they've done is perfect. And for the price tag of the $180 to $200, depending on where you're getting it from, you can say it's a fair price. It's a significant increase over the previous models, fair enough. But it's a fair price. It brings a HAKUGEI cable, sorry. So it's okay. It brings a nice, different. Although it's a run-of-the-mill case, it's a nice case. It's not bad. I think that maybe it could have been slightly less to be a little bit more inviting. But look, it is what it is. I'm just basically expressing my opinion. What do I have here to then compare the GQ100 with? Very simple. I've got the MS5, the HIFIGO MS5, for the reason that, just rewind a little bit. This, let me just say that this is an IEM for those that want details, period. If you want loads of details, loads of twinklies and sparklies, and if that is your cup of tea, if that is what rocks your boat, this is the IEM for you. So for all those technical aficionados out there, or for those guys that want to listen to every single last detail, this for monitoring, I think would be pretty decent. It would really be pretty decent. Now, having said that, I've chosen IEMs here that were also known or also known for being very detailed IEMs, okay, or then very high energy the IEMs, which is two different things. The MS5 is a high energy IEM. It is high energy and it is very detailed when you listen to it by itself and when you listen to it compared to similar things like I did in the review of the MS5. When you compare it to an H50, when you compare it to an AFUL, to the Performer 5, when you compare it to that kind of grade of IEMs, you can sense that it's got energy and it's got plenty of detail and plenty of everything. Okay, when compared to the GEEKWOLD, to the GQ100, it seems like it's not detailed. Okay, that's for you to already get the feeling of what we're talking about here. Next to it, I've got here something that some of you might call blasphemy for me to even have the audacity to put it here, which is the QDC Anole VX, and the only reason why I have it here is because my good friend Gustavo still hasn't asked me for it back, but I'm sure he will. But anyway, I've got the Anole VX here. Why? Because when I listened to this the first time, immediately the first IEM that I thought about was the Anole. And funny enough, when I went and graphed this, the curve, the overall graph is very similar to the Anole. I'm not saying that this is an Anole VX. Right? Pay attention, please. Let's get that perfectly clear. This is not an Anole VX, but it has got a lot, in my opinion, of the DNA of the Anole VX. Namely, that crazy amount of detail that the Anole VX has. Okay, crazy amount. It's got it. Then I've got on this side two planars. The granddaddy of all planars, the 7 Hz timeless. I mean, what can I say that hasn't been said? I mean, for its time and even for today, because I listened to it now over the last couple of days to make this review for you guys. So super detailed. It's got huge soundstage, huge. Everything is very big. Very loads of details, loads and loads of details. Great bass, contrary to what some people might think. I think it's got great bass. It's got good extension, good dynamics. It's a very well tuned planar. Yes, there were planars that came out afterwards better. Some of them lost a little bit of that planar characteristic, which is that openness, that cleanliness of the sound. And became more kind of DD-like. Others didn't go down that road so much. But the reality is this set the stage, and this is the IM that is responsible for all the planars that we have gotten ever since. And if if it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for 7 Hz being or having the guts and the for lack of a better word, the balls to do this, we probably wouldn't have had this age of planars that we've had. And then next to that, we have the Stellaris, the Moondrop. And it is here because, again, loads of details, loads of all the technicalities that you can imagine, let down then by basically a bass that didn't keep up. Okay, in essence, that's basically it. The bass didn't keep up, and it just made it sound very thin. Okay. But the Stellaris is here as well because of that ability to have loads of details and loads of resolution, let's put it that way. Okay. So, sound of the GQ100. I liked it because, first of all, I spent time playing around with tips until I found the right tip that worked. Which again, and much like the MS5, is something that I will tell everybody that thinks about buying the GQ100 that you better be prepared to do that. Otherwise, what will happen is you will put the earphones in your ear, use the stock tips, and be disappointed. That's because that's exactly what happened to me. When I initially used the stock tips, because I like using the stock tips when I see that they look half decent, and they did, I listened to the GQ100 and I said, okay, something is wrong here. And immediately I took out my tips and I started playing around and finding and looking and searching and so on and so forth. Initially I tried some wide bore BGVPs, which I have over here, and these worked wonders. Okay, it made the sound become a little bit more what I was expecting it to be. I then later went for these semi-wide bores from KB here, the 07s, the yellows, which I really like these tips and they work fantastic. And most of my listening was to a certain point done with these. And then I said to myself, okay, let me see if I can maybe correct a little bit more some aspects of the GQ's 100 sound to really try and make it become maybe perhaps more pleasant for the majority of people, because some of these issues are issues that don't really bug me but could bug other people, much like the MS5 also has those kind of problems. Tried the Comply the foams, and the Comply foams did exactly what I was wanting to or hoping that it would do, which was bring down that 5-6K area a little bit, bring down again the 8 to 9-10K, and then bring down the past 10K area slightly. And what it brought down made the sound just perfect for me, just spot on, perfect. Okay, and then out of curiosity I started trying some of the more let's say they're not esoteric or anything of the sort, no they aren't, but just more unusual tips of this new wave of the UCIs and the TRNs, which is these ones, and the Clarions from TRI and the APBs from Tans Gym. And funny enough, out of all of them, the one that worked the best and gave me results which were basically identical to the complies with the TRNs. Okay, the TRNs, the tips that basically come with all the latest models that they've released, MT4, yes, MT3, TA3, the Rosefinch, the now newly released MT1 Max. They all bring these tips, and this tip, in my opinion, this is a suggestion I'm giving GEEKWOLD, this style of tip and foams should be the tips that come with the GEEKWOLD GK100. Okay, why? I'll get to that now. The sound, when you listen to it, is very detailed. And because it's very detailed, and because it's an easy IEM to drive, and because it's got a relatively high sensitivity, it plays loud. It doesn't play loud like the MS5, in the sense that it doesn't have the bass of the MS5. So I was actually quite surprised to hear some people mention that it has loads of bass. I didn't find it has loads of bass. It's got very good bass. It's an 8mm driver, so let's not forget that. So although graphically it might look like it's got a ton of bass, it doesn't. It's got very well done bass. And funny enough, exactly what I'm assuming because I heard the same kind of basic setup on the GQ10, and somehow the reason or the fact that it's got that PZT making part of that enclosure that has those two dual dynamics, those double DDs, it somehow has helped to make that bass just a little bit more snappier than what you would expect. So it's got that nice warmth and body of a DD associated with a certain touch of that BA bass that you know how it is. Okay, I'm almost positive that's the magic that they've done there. That's the voodoo that they've done, because it sounds really good. The bass sounds very, very mature, way more mature, and in my opinion, actually way more well executed than the rest of the frequencies in one specific area. Okay, and then dip, relatively tame pin again, nothing crazy. I mean, everything sits within a window of about 10 dBs, but I'll get to that afterwards when I show you the graphs. And then it begins nicely, peaks, goes nicely, and then there's a first peak at 5K. And that first peak at 5K is noticeable. With stock tips, very noticeable. When I started using these, the KB07s, it came down a little bit, but just enough to become less noticeable, but it was still there. When I started using the complies or the TRNs, it came down even further and even made it better. Okay, and then it's got nice extension past 10K, but I feel that extension past 10K should be just slightly tamer. Why? Because, and especially in cymbals and hi-hats, that's where, when you crank the volume a little bit, that's where that can become a little bit too much. Okay, that's where the piezos showcase that metallicness that they're so well known for. That's where the BAs that are there present as well can showcase a little bit of that metallic characteristic that is again associated with BAs. And that is, honestly, in my opinion, the only flaw that this IEM has. For what they have tried to do, I think that they have been very successful, honestly. I really do. You know, you guys might be thinking, oh, but you say everything is good. No, I'm not saying everything is good. It's like I said countless times. I always do my very best to try and look at an IEM and try and understand what was on the other side. If it's been well done, I'll say it. If it hasn't been well done, I'll say it as well. If it needs improvement, I'll say it. And that's what I'm saying now. This has been well executed, and it just requires a little touch here and there. And the touch that it requires, short of actually having to retune it, is the tips, in my opinion, well, the ones that have been sold already, I guess nobody can do anything, but perhaps on a second wave of IEMs that they do sell, they can maybe change the tips out and already give these tips to us as customers. Give us the foam tips, okay? There's There's plenty foam tips out there which are almost identical to the complies. You don't have to go and buy complies, okay? And give us tips which are like the TRNs or are the TRNs. Why not? You know, it's a question of the same way they made a collab with HAKUGEI to get the cable. They could reach an understanding as well for the tips, because the tips really make a huge difference on how that detail comes across. The simple fact that it tames, okay, the BAs, and it tames the output of the piezos, that amount that it does, and I'll show you in the graph in a second, it is enough to make the sound every bit as detailed as it's been, okay? Huge amount of details. And when I mean huge amount of details. This thing can seriously go and fetch things that you don't expect at this price or at any price, to be honest. I mean, the Timeless, it's a detailed IEM. It's got loads of details. By comparison, okay, and bar reaching that point where things start getting a little bit too much here on the GQ100, the Timeless actually sounds a little bit subdued next to the GQ. And the Timeless was known for being a very alive sounding IEM. So things like, for example, let me see here. Let me give you an example already of what I'm talking about. Twilight, okay? Perhaps you can hear it in the background. Brian Simpson. These hits that you hear, okay? The sax. With any other tip, which is not the ones that I've mentioned, and at least for me, okay? But I'm sure these tips will work as well for the majority of people. That piano, when you crank the volume, can get just a little bit too much. Those cymbals can become just a little bit too, too unreal, too unpolished. The sax as well, the same thing. So it is quite amazing that just by putting some foams or by using those TRNs, we can bring that down just enough for it to become so much more polished. It doesn't become perfect by any means, no, it doesn't. But it becomes so much better, that it honestly is something that I really truly think that GEEKWOLD should consider doing, because the difference is huge. It's not big, it's huge. Okay, it will be what I think will make a person that is undecided whether he will like it or not say yes as opposed to no. Okay. Timbre and tonality. Obviously, when we're talking about this much detail, it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to say, no, it sounds natural. No, it doesn't sound natural. And as I mentioned, if I'm not using, or if I wasn't using the correct tip, I would say, no, I don't really like it. It's unnatural, but it's too much. With the tips that I've been using, the compliers and the TRNs, it sounds unnatural, true, but it's nice. It's actually engaging. I actually find myself saying, wow, okay, this sounds a little bit over energetic, doesn't sound spot on, but it's nice. The piano notes actually, they have this energy which, although might not be 100% corresponding to the reality, it sounds engaging. It's pleasurable to listen to. Okay, let me show you another song, for example. Feels Good. Same thing. Those snaps of the finger. Okay. Stock tips or any other tip which are not these ones that I used. At low volumes, fine. It's fantastic. Amazing. The moment you crank it up a little bit, it's gonna hurt you. It's gonna hurt you, and you're not gonna like it. So I can understand what some people were saying, that, oh, maybe this is just a little bit too much. Look, much like what some people have already said about the MS5. Same thing. With the correct, with the compliers again, or with the TRNs, or something similar to the TRNs that I don't have and I didn't try, but maybe you guys might have and might try. It's good. It is really good. Let me see here another song that I was surprised with regards to the details. Sorry about this. Well, From Dusk to Dawn, from George Duke. Amazing. it's a really nice IEM to listen to this. Will it ultimately be as satisfying as, for example, maybe an H50, which is an IEM that I really enjoy listening to, the ISN, or as satisfying as the EST50 as well from ISN, or as satisfying as, for example, a Canon? Perhaps not. Why? Only for one reason. Because even though it's been tamed down, it's been more relaxed, more polished up, that issue, okay? It is still an IEM that after a while you start wanting to, okay, this is enough. Let's bring it now down to more sensible levels, so that we can enjoy listening to music for 2-3 hours as opposed to maybe just 1 hour. I will say that the most I listened to it was about an hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes. And then I started getting fatigued, I have to admit. But, I mean, it's not too bad. That's not too bad. Again, granted, I was listening to it, relatively high volumes. I wasn't exactly just, having the volume down low. No, I was giving it some good amount of power. So yeah, that's basically, I think, overall that part. In terms of its soundstage, huge soundstage. It's got very much that soundstage that you could get on a timeless. Although having said that, the timeless still is able to create a huge soundstage which is more realistic. This, you can feel that soundstage that is created on the basis of emphasizing certain frequencies as opposed to it being genuinely created, if you understand what I'm saying. But it's good. It's got a good soundstage, good imaging. I mean, very easy to pick out things. Detailed retrieval. We need not say any more about that. It's perfect. Loads of twinklies and sparklers, loads. And that's it. So, the soundstage is perhaps a little bit artificially created. Timbre and tonality will be artificial and will be very much dependent on the tip that you use for it to be for you to accept more that let's say color that it has, and then as I mentioned, in terms of the actual frequencies, it's fine. I mean, I actually didn't find any part that I didn't like, because everything sounds very evenly matched. There's good amount of bass. There could be a little bit more to match the mids and the highs. I'm not going to deny it, but it's fine. It keeps up with the mids and the highs that are there. The mids in terms of vocals, male and female voices, spot on. Nothing to say there. Perhaps the female voices will be the ones that can maybe shine or come across as less correct if the tips are not the ideal. And the treble, again, the same situation. It will be more in stuff like the hi-hats and cymbals and so on and so forth that you will perhaps notice the slight flaw that this IEM has in that aspect. Okay, and which is something that, I mean, I'm talking about myself. Obviously, there will probably be loads of you that won't even be bothered by it, but I think it's important that I mention this so that you're not caught by surprise. As then compared to what we have here, what can I say? Well, perhaps I'll start here with the plainers. Compared to the Stellaris, the GQ100 is a better IEM overall. Even with the flaw that it has, it's a better IEM because it is more coherent in the way that it's balanced out in the sound. This just lacks bass. There's a lot of energy in the up, in the post pinna gain area. Loads of details, loads of everything there, but not enough bass to keep up, so it just sounds thin. So the GQ100 is a better IEM. Compared to the Timeless, I'm not going to say it's a better IEM. I'm going to rather say that it's an interesting side grade, because it is able to do things that the Timeless cannot do, but the Timeless is also able to do things that the GQ cannot do. What is it able to do that the Timeless cannot do? Funny enough, the way that the bass comes across on the GQ is more satisfying than it comes across here. And it's not a question of quantity or ultimately, I guess, quality. It's just the tonality that the bass has is just nicer there somehow. In terms of the mids, I would probably give that to the Timeless. Just edge it out. It just edges it out slightly. And the treble as well, I would guess I would have to give it as well to the Timeless. Just edging out the GQ100 by a little bit. And basically, it does that for the simple reason that because it's a little bit more tame, and you'll see it in the graph when I show you, it just comes across as more balanced. You know, when you actually are using the compliers or the TRNs on here, that proximity comes, they become, well, they actually start swapping blows. While with the other tips, which are not these foams or the TRN, you'll say, or you will easily identify the Timeless a lot of the times. When you put these tips, and if the volume is properly matched, it will be a harder one for you to actually start picking out which is who, you know, because they will trade blows very well. So that's those two out of the way. Compared to the MS5, it's a complete opposite in the sense that the MS5 is you know, it's all energy. It's got crazy amounts of bass, which that doesn't have. Loads of slam, which that doesn't have. And obviously, then by comparison, the pinna gain and post pinna gain area. So mids, upper mids, treble. This sounds dead by comparison to that. Way more detailed retrieval there. Way more soundstage. Way more everything more. Which of the two sounds more realistic and more correct? Ultimately, I would probably say this. I would probably say that this actually ultimately comes out on top. But again, it's not a big difference. So they evenly match there. But okay, fine. I'm not going to give a clear winner here. I would probably say again, much like the Timeless, there are interesting side grades. Okay. As compared to the Anole VX, obviously we know the Anole VX wins. I mean, if the geek world was able to play on the level of an Anole VX, then something here was wrong. Although, having said that, you know, the reality is that the current market has evolved so much that we are getting more and more IEMs that are capable of just blowing us away with their performance. So, the Anole VX is every bit as detailed, if not more detailed, with that extra amount of polish. You know, you listen to it, and it's not so much in the bass where you see the difference, to be honest. Okay, you notice the bass here has got a little bit more texture. You notice the bass here is a little bit more polished. But this actually in the bass keeps up very nicely with the Anole VX. It actually keeps up very nicely. You know, and considering it's an 8mm DD, it's good. I think it's a fair, not. Trying to find the correct word. It's actually quite impressive that it's able to do that. I mean, an IM that costs $200 versus an IM that costs $2,200. And in terms of the bass, they come close, which, you know, it's good. Where obviously you see the differences is in the timbre, the tonality. The Anole VX is faultless. Okay, faultless. The way that everything is just silky smooth by comparison to that. And honestly, you know, it's all just down to that extra energy there, or that extra lack of polish that exists. Because, you know, obviously I'm only being able to say this because I have the Anole VX. If I didn't have the Anole VX, I wouldn't be able to tell you this. By itself, and, you know, once you've chosen the right tips, by itself, I'm absolutely positive that you will be very impressed. Very, very impressed. It's when you compare it to something of this caliber that you then see that yes, there is the occasional song that is actually like Sunrise, like the one that's playing right now, Sunrise, the live version from Larry Carlton. You know, ultimately, yes, I can tell you that this is the Anole and that's the GQ100 playing. But you know what? You listen to it under normal circumstance, you know, and you'll be quite surprised. You'll be quite impressed by how well the GQ is able to keep up with the Anole VX. So that's saying a lot for the GQ. From Dusk to Dawn, from Dusk to Dawn from George Duke as well. Another one, The Chemistry of Love from Michael Franks. There you start seeing the Anole VX showing its colors. True. Elephant from Carol Dubach as well. There you see the VX showing its colors. But you know, there were quite a lot more songs than what I was expecting that the GQ actually did well. Not that it did it better than the Anole, no, but it actually was able to give it a little bit of a fight, you know, kind of poking it a little bit. London, Paris, Cardiff, for example, was one of those. Ultimately, yes, the VX came out on top, but it was one of those. Anyway, guys, look, this is the GQ100. It's an IM that, again, much like the MS5, is an IM that's going to be directed to a specific crowd of people. It's not going to be for everybody. But if you are one of those that wants to try something out different, you want to get something different, I'll tell you, yeah, fine, go try it out. Listen to it first and then decide. But make sure that you are prepared to play around with the tips and find the right tip to make it sound as it can. I've heard as well that there's a new model already on the works, an improvement basically of this, and I hope that basically what I've been able to say and tell you guys, some of it will leak down to Geek World, and they will take that into account and consider applying those little suggestions that I said, because you know, this doesn't need any more energy or any more detail. It doesn't. What it has, it's fine. What this needs now is to be polished up. That's what it needs. It needs to be you know, to really give it that pristine execution, to make it really, really stand out. That's what it needs. Anyway, guys, I'll show you now the graphs, and that's it. Okay, see you now. Hi guys, welcome now to the graph section. I'll just quickly show you the graphs with the stock tips, and then we'll go on to the tips that I used. So this is using this is the GQ100 using the blue tip that it's got. This is using the red tip, and this is using the yellow tip. And basically the difference here that you see has to do with the insertion. The yellow tip, being the smallest one, allows for a deeper insertion, so that peak moves over past the 8K, which is usually what it is. The blue is roughly the standard. I mean, I could have just been a little bit more diligent there and made it sure it was on 8K. And then the red tip is the thicker diameter one, so it's a little bit difficult to actually make it fit in a way that the peak coincides there. But this is basically the graphs with the stock tips. Okay, so let's get this out here of the way and eliminate them here so they don't bother us and I don't make mistakes. Okay, so now this is the GQ100 with the yellow KB07 tip. As you can see, it's got that peak that's very close to 8K. It's just, this was just an issue with the tip actually inserting deep enough into the coupler. Really not an issue, you know, nothing else more than that. Base nicely plateaued, you know, and then it's got this kind of smooth dropping off. It bleeds slightly into the mids, but it isn't anything which is really you know, aggressive or offensive or anything. And then on the other hand, because you have so much detail up top, it actually compensates a little bit of the possible muddiness that can come along with this bleeding a little bit. Everything sits within a window of 67. So 70, so 10 dBs is about there. Okay, that's about the 10 dB bracket. And then you have, actually, sorry guys, let me just make it perfect, 10 dBs. So 10 dBs is there. And then you have this area here of 4, 5K, and then the coupler eventually area. You have this area here, let's put this area between 4 and 8 that stands out. And this area you actually do notice it, and it showcases that metallicness that I was talking about. It showcases that B8 timbre that's very you know, prominent and can be a little bit fatiguing and unsatisfying for some. But anyway, that's the GQ100. I'm going to show you now quickly so you guys can just have an idea. This is the graph of the GQ10. Okay, actually let me just change the color here so you can see it stand out. Sorry, there we go. So the GQ10, as you can see, actually this area here is very similar. very, very, very similar. And then the bass has got a bit more of a mid-bass bump there. It's not as polished as the bass on the GQ100, but I will say that this area here has got the right energy, let's put it that way. The only thing, the real flaw of the GQ10 was that you could differentiate very well. This is a BA, this is the DD, this is the... So there wasn't there wasn't a correct matching of the drivers. It wasn't coherent. It didn't come across as just one single driver, which is something that on the GQ100, apart from the piezo's, I think it's been way more well achieved. It's actually quite well executed. Especially that one module that has the bass, the two bass drivers and two piezo's. You don't notice that there's three different things they're working. No, it comes across that's part of the spectrum. So all the way up to, I would say, maybe 800 to a K. That part of the spectrum comes across as one solid driver there that's doing that. So this is the GQ10. This was the GQ80, which you can see was a total mess. I mean, you want pin again, people talk about, fat freak maestro has got, I don't know, much gain on the bass and this and that. Well, this is 67 to 85. It's almost 20 dBs of pin again in either way. Not bad, huh? Okay, so let's just get this out of the way. This was definitely not one of the better ones. The GQ10 wasn't bad, but anyway, that's also out of the way. So let's just leave what matters, which is this. First comparison, Anole VX. I've normalized it at 500 Hertz, just for the sake of you guys knowing. And you can see what I was meaning by how similar they actually graph, very similar. And then when I show you another graph a little bit now of the GQ100, you'll see even how more similar it is. But with the yellow tips, this was what I got, and that's how it is. This is now the timeless. As you can see, the timeless very similar in terms of the bass, the pin again, everything very similar. It's just the timeless is just way more polished over here, and although it's all ragged and so on and so forth, like you see that, it's more polished. It's got a little bit extra finesse that the GQ100 doesn't have, because of having again that extra amount of energy of what it is at this area of 4 to 8, let's put it. And then it's got a nice extension past 10K, and this bump, or this dip here, sorry, is a very good indicator of how good that soundstage, how big that 3D on the timeless is. Okay, so that's the timeless for you. The next one is the Stellaris, and you can see, I mean, yes, this has been well done, but this is way too much and no bass, so no, not a good one. So that's the Stellaris out of the way. Actually, just timeless and Stellaris. You can see there's a lot of similarities between the timeless and the Stellaris, actually. A lot of similarities, but the difference in sound is huge. Okay, so let's get the Stellaris taken out. Let's take out the timeless as well. We don't need it anymore. Let's now then let me now just show you now what I did with the various, changing around the tips, trying to find that ideal tip. So I started off with putting the comply foams, and the moment I put on the comply foams, straight away I got this area past 10K to become way more relaxed, and it's noticeable enough, and you can hear it enough to say, wow, there's been an improvement there, and there is. And when, for example, I compare it to the Anole VX, like I was mentioning, you can see it now kind of is more Anole VX in a way, to an extent. It's become more that energy level there, and that's what it needs to be. It's at that energy level, okay? Then I said, okay, hold on. I think I can still improve upon that. Sorry, let me just clear some graphs. So this is our starting point, okay, with the yellow tip. I did the foam, that's what I got. And then I said, I think I can still do better than that. Oh, sorry, not this one. No, not this one. Yes, this one. I think I can still do better than that. And that's when I tried then the tips, the TRIs, the Clarions from the Clarion from TRI, the TRNs, the APBs, and this blue line that you now see is with the TRN tip. So with the TRN tip, more significant that this rearrangement of this part of the spectrum here. Yes, the peak still stays and it's spot on there on 8, and there's still energy past 10k as before, but it's also noticeable. So it's using the TRN or the comply will be very much up to you. I'll just put the two together. What you see is the comply, the other one is the TRN. You decide now which is the one that actually pleases you the most. Okay? And then I said, hold on, let me still see if I can improve on this. And what I have now done is something that, well, I can share for those that want to know, but what I've now done was do a little small addition to the foam tip, okay? And the addition to the foam tip yielded me this result. So this is the purple line is just the foam tip, and then the addition that I did extra to it conferred to me this curve, and this curve and this sound is not good. It is very good, okay? And not satisfied with that, I said, well, I think I can still do better than that, and that's exactly what I did, and I came up with this, okay? From the yellow to now that final one. And honestly, this specific line, this specific graph, and the way it sounds, this or this one, these two sound absolutely amazing. I mean, to my ears, to my taste, to my musical choices, this sounds faultless. As I said, I hope GQ will want to know exactly what it is that I am suggesting, and if they do, I'll be more than happy to share. And that's it, guys. This is what I have for you on the GQ100. It's a nice, detailed sounding IM for those of you that are freaks that in that aspect, that want that. That's what makes you tick. That's the details. This is the IM for you guys. All right. Anyway, you have a good one. Take care. Bye bye.